Hare Krishna. Today we are going to study the verse number 8 and 9 of the 5th chapter of Bhagwat Gita as it is. And the name of this chapter is Karma Yoga, that is, action in Krishna consciousness. By now, we are well versed by the terms Karma and Karma Yoga. Karma is the work which is done for one's own sense gratification. For example, when a person works very hard to raise the standard of his life, which means wanting to have a better house, better clothes, better means of entertainment, going to restaurants and malls for having food and shopping. And for all these reasons, when a person works very hard, then he is called a karmi, who is doing hard work for himself and for his own enjoyment. On the contrary, when a person works only to make Krishna happy, which means that he does not use the money earned by him for his enjoyment, but instead he spends it in Krishna conscious activities like organizing Bhagwat Saptaha, distributing prasad, distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, organizing katha and kirtan, going to dham. Such a person is engaged in Karma Yoga. Srila Prabhupada, in very simple words, says that materially conscious people do karma and Krishna conscious people engage in Karma Yoga. And when a person is engaged in Karma Yoga, then he becomes Yog Yukta, which means that his consciousness is pure, his mind is stable, and his senses are also in perfect control. And such a person becomes Tattva Vit, which means knower of the ultimate truth, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he himself is a part of Krishna, and his true self is this, that he is an eternal servant of Krishna. Krishna is the ultimate proprietor and enjoyer, and all living beings are supposed to make Krishna enjoy. Just the same way as different parts of the body, that is, eyes, nose, ears, hands, legs, are meant to serve the stomach. And when the stomach is happy, then the entire body is healthy. In the previous verse, the most important thing that we learnt is this, that one who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is very dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though he is always working, yet such a man is never entangled in the reactions of his work. Now let us begin today's verse, in which Krishna gives us a list of things, and if a person thinks himself to be the doer of these things, then he will definitely get entangled in the reactions of his karma. To begin the verse, let us recite the verse number 8 and 9 of chapter number 5. Neva kinchit karomiti yukto manye tatatvavit pashyan shrunvan sprishan jigran ashnan gachan swapan shwasan pralapan visrijan jigran unmishan nimishannapi indriyani indriyartheshu vartante iti dharayan neva kinchit karomiti yukto manye tatatvavit pashyan shrunvan sprishan jigran ashnan gachan swapan shwasan pralapan visrijan grihinan unmishan nimishannapi indriyani indriyartheshu vartante iti dharayan. This shlok, Krishna says that a person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows himself that he is actually not the doer of anything. He knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all, because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, opening and closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects, and that he is aloof from them because he is spirit soul. So he always knows that the material senses are engaged with their objects and he is aloof from them. Now let us read Srila Prabhupada's purport to understand this very important verse in a nice manner. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Anant Koti Vaishnavo ki jai. Srila Prabhupada says that a person in the divine consciousness, although he may be engaged in activities like seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping and breathing in and out, but he always knows deep within himself that he actually does nothing at all, because he is a spirit soul and all these activities are done by the sense organs, which he is not. He knows fully well that it's only the sense organs which gets engaged in their respective sense objects, and he, being spirit soul, is completely aloof from all these activities. Further, he has the complete knowledge that nothing can happen without the sanction of Krishna. Not a blade of grass moves without the sanction of Krishna. So a Krishna conscious person, while doing all the activities of his daily life, knows it for sure that it is not he who is doing any work. Rather, it is the senses which are engaged, and that too with the sanction of Krishna. Many a times it has been experienced by us that we are unable to eat the food that we have ourselves prepared. So the ultimate sanction for everything comes from Krishna. Srila Prabhupada says that he has himself experienced it with his Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Siddhant Saraswati Thakur. Srila Prabhupada says that Srila Bhakti Siddhant Saraswati Thakur would always say that he would do a thing only if Krishna sanctions him, or would go anywhere only with the sanction of Krishna. Srila Bhakti Siddhant Saraswati Thakur never said, I will do or I will go. Now we need to understand here that why a Krishna conscious person never says that he does anything, because he is the seer of the ultimate truth. And the fact is this, that we are all spirit soul and we have nothing to do with this material world. So a Krishna conscious person never claims to be doing anything, because he knows that it's only the senses which gets engaged with the sense objects, and the soul which is seated in the heart has no business with anything in the material world. Srila Prabhupada explains we have two types of sense organs. The first is the knowledge acquiring senses, that is, eyes, nose, tongue, ears, and skin. And the second type is the working organs like hands, legs, mouth, genitals, and waste outlet organs. And all the work is done by these two types of sense organs, and the soul is untouched by all these activities. So, a Krishna conscious person may seem to be doing all kinds of work which is done by a materially conscious person. He never gets entangled with the reactions of his action because he never does anything for the satisfaction of his senses. Rather, he does everything only to please Krishna. I have the example of Arjun, who killed so many soldiers in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, but was not subjected to any kind of punishment because he killed the soldiers in the battlefield with the order of Krishna and not to fulfill his own desire. This is the secret art of doing all our prescribed duties, yet not getting entangled with the result of the action. It's like the leaf of the lotus, which is very much in the water, but not a drop of water can stay on the leaf. A Krishna conscious person knows that behind every work there are 5 factors which are acting. And the 5 factors are the doer, the work, the situation, efforts, and the fortune. These 5 factors make anything happen, and he himself, being the soul, is only instrumental for the work which is done by the ultimate sanction of the Supreme Lord. Srila Prabhupada says that since a Krishna conscious person never thinks himself to be the doer of any work, so he does not get entangled with the reaction of his work. And the person who thinks himself to be the doer of his work gets entangled with the result of his work. Krishna, in chapter number 2, verse number 47 has said, Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phal heturbhu ma te sangostu akarmani. Krishna has very clearly said, O Arjun, you have a right to do your karma, but you do not have a right on the fruits of your action. And never think yourself to be the doer of your action, and neither get attached to inaction. Ma karmphal heturbhu is explained in great detail in today's verse. Srila Prabhupada says that if we think a little bit logically, then we will ourselves come to know that all the work in this material world is actually done by the 2 types of sense organs, and our identity is different from the sense organs. We are spirit soul. We are just instrumental in any work with the sanction of Krishna. So a person who is a Krishna conscious person does all his work, yet he is free from the consequences because he has not used the senses for his own sense gratification. Rather, he has only followed the orders given in the Shastra. Srila Prabhupada says that a karma yogi does all the work which is prescribed in the scriptures and never does any vikarma or akarma. Vikarma means the work which has been prohibited in the scriptures, and akarma, it means not doing one's own duties according to the Varn Ashram Dharma. So a Krishna conscious person does only his prescribed duties and having no feeling of doership. This is why he is eternally liberated in spite of doing all his work. Chapter number 3, verse number 27, Krishna says, Prakriteh kriyamanani gune karmani sarvashah ahankar vimudhatma karta aham iti manyate. Krishna says that the bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself to be the doer of activities, which are in actuality carried out by nature. Prabhupada says that the person in material consciousness is convinced by false ego that he is the doer of everything. He does not know that the three modes of material nature, that is the tamogun, or we can say the mode of ignorance, rajogun, the mode of passion, and satogun, the mode of goodness, forcibly makes a person do things because these three modes of nature are like chain, and all men are bound by these three chains until they become Krishna conscious. In Tamogun, the person is predominated by laziness and sleep. In Rajogun, he becomes very active in the matter of earning money to increase the standard of sense gratifications. And in Satogun, he is attached in acquiring more and more knowledge and becomes very proud of his knowledge and his educational degrees. These people think themselves to be the doer of their activities because they don't know the three modes of material nature are making them do all sorts of activities, and the three modes of material nature is controlled by the Supreme Krishna. So ultimately, no one is actually doing anything independently, but the ignorant person is unaware of it. The gross body and the subtle body is created by the five elements of the material nature under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So ideally, it should be engaged in the service of Supreme Krishna in Krishna consciousness, because Krishna is Rishikesh, which means the master of the senses. But the ignorant person, unaware of this fact, engages his senses for his own sense gratifications and thinks himself to be the doer of his activities. And Krishna calls such kind of people ahankar vimud atma karta aham iti manyate. Ahankar means false ego, and karta aham iti manyate means that he thinks himself to be the doer of his activities, whereas the reality is this, that all the activities are governed by the three modes of material nature, which is under the Supreme Krishna. And a Krishna conscious person is well aware of this fact, that he is spirit soul and a part of Krishna, and he is an eternal servant of Krishna. So he engages all his senses in the service of Krishna, though he appears to be doing all the work as a materially conscious person does. But his intention is not to make himself happy, rather to make Krishna happy. Now, to summarize it, let me take only 3 things. Krishna, in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, said to Arjun to not to think himself to be the doer of his work. And then in the 3rd chapter, he said that only an ignorant person claims himself to be the doer of his activities. And now, in the present verse, that is the verse number 8 and 9 of the chapter number 5, Krishna says that a Tattva-vid person means a person who knows the truth that Krishna is the supreme controller of everything, always says that he is not the doer of anything, whether it is seeing, smelling, walking, talking, breathing, eating, sleeping, etc., etc. He always says, Naiva kinchit karo miti, which means that I have not done anything. Srila Prabhupada says that we need to understand this sequence and why is Krishna saying this to us. And the only reason for it is this, that Krishna wants us to come out of this endless cycle of birth and death in 84 lakhs of species and get back to the spiritual world in the spiritual body where there is no birth and no death. And this will happen only when we will take the orders from our scriptures and do all our work without having the feeling of doership. Then we will not be entangled in the reactions of our work. Like Arjun, with the orders of Krishna, killed so many soldiers in the battlefield, but he was not subjected to any punishment because he did not do anything for his own wish fulfillment. Rather, he only carried out the orders of Krishna and remained sinless in spite of killing so many soldiers. This is exactly what we are supposed to be doing. Till now, because of our false ego, we had been thinking that I have worked very hard in my life and earned money and have made my house or bought car or have given education to children or taken care of my family. All this type of thinking is due to ignorance. And the reality is this, that everything happens with the sanction of Krishna, and the body with which we do all the so-called work with the help of sense organs is also a gift of Krishna to us. Everything is given to us by Krishna. So where are we doing anything independently? But this thinking comes only with the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. So it's very important to study Bhagavad Gita under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master and do everything as it is instructed in Bhagavad Gita. Arjun, first he said, Na yotsyam iti govind, which means I shall not fight. And after listening the entire Bhagavad Gita, the same Arjun said, Karishya vachanam tav, which means I will do everything whatever you say. And every action of Arjun is actually meant for us. Before getting the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, we all had been doing things in our own way, but not anymore. Srila Prabhupada says that let us all become Arjun and take the orders from Krishna, who is always with us in the form of Bhagavad Gita. And then we will not face any consequences of our work because we have done everything according to the orders of Krishna. The sum and substance of today's verse is this, that the Krishna conscious persons never claim to be the doer of any work because they know that it's only Krishna with whose sanction all the work happens. The individual person has minute independence of making choice, either to please his own senses or to please Krishna's senses. So it is for sure that nothing happens without the sanction of Krishna. Now a question may come in our mind, that all the bad things that are happening and the good things that are happening, are they both happening with the sanction of Krishna? To answer this, Srila Prabhupada says that yes, it is absolutely true. Everything happens, good or bad, with the sanction of Krishna. The individual person has the independence of only making the choice. But happening of a thing depends on Krishna's wish. If a person makes a choice to satisfy himself and fulfill his desires, then he is called a materialistic person, and he does get entangled in the reactions of his action because he has used his body and senses, which is given by Krishna, to make himself happy, and thus he gets entangled. But if a person who uses his body and senses to make Krishna happy, then he is not entangled, as he has not used it for his own happiness, and such a person is liberated in spite of doing all sorts of worldly duties. Now it totally depends on our intention, our choice. If we have the intention to make Krishna happy, then we will be liberated. But if we have the choice of making our own self happy, then certainly we will be entangled. The choice is ours, the intention is ours, because the life is ours and the future is also ours. Krishna is showing us the way how to work and yet not get trapped. Now, it's left to our wisdom, because Srila Prabhupada has explained it very nicely, and I am sure none of us, after listening to the purport of Srila Prabhupada, will ever feel that I am the doer of anything, because all the senses and the sense objects which is available in this material world, we are different from it. We are spirit souls and we have nothing to do with all these material things. We are just instrumental in doing anything, and that too with the sanction of Krishna. So when we think that we are not the doers, we are liberated from the consequences of the action. But if we think that we are the doers, then only we get entangled. Now, I am sure each one of us is very, very clear about it, how to do the work and get liberated. I thank Srila Prabhupada and my Shiksha Guru, His Grace Hari Mohan Das Prabhuji, for explaining us the most secretive knowledge of Bhagwat Gita in such simple manner. I thank each one of you for listening to Bhagwat Gita shlokas so attentively and with complete faith. Now we shall meet next week with the verse number 10, and till then, keep chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, as this is the only way to make our consciousness pure in Kali Yuga. Harir Nam, Harir Nam, Harir Nam Eva Kevalam, Kalau Nastiv, 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 Gatir Anyatha. We do not have any other way to make our consciousness pure. And when our consciousness is pure, then we can understand Krishna's words in Bhagavad Gita in a better manner. Because to understand Krishna, we need to have a pure consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari